on my honeymoon, after my second season of shows, I met my wife, we got married, and we were on our honeymoon, and she said, "What would you regret on your deathbed never having done?" And I said, "Writing a book and getting it published." And she said, "Okay, when we get home, you need to start spending 2 hours a day, protected time, make that happen." And that's kind of the condensed 30,000-foot version of how it happened.
So joining us now and back by popular demand is Brad Thor. He's a #1 New York Times best-selling author. He's got 24 thrillers. The latest one, I'm going to hold it up here for everybody, The Shadow of Doubt. Okay, so let me tell you something. I don't know how you do this, but I do think that you have you could tell me if there's a crystal ball somewhere in that house of yours, because you're predicting events that happen prior to them happening, right? So everything in this book could happen, and I want to get into that. It's brilliant to have you here. I'm a big fan. My mother-in-law is a big fan, and I will point out to everybody that Brad is a good guy. He wrote a very nice inscription to my mother-in-law, which made me look good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, but let's start with you, because I want to refresh everybody with your background, how you got into writing these books. And this is obviously a labor of love for you, but you weren't always doing this. And remember, I'm going to ask you to color this, where I have a lot of young people listening to this podcast,
Sure.
Brad. And how do you go from what you're doing, which is a traditional thing, to something that is a labor of love? And when did you make the leap, and why?
Okay, so real quick, my family background, we're an immigrant family, so to speak. My grandfather was the first one born in America. We're from Scandinavia. My dad went into the Marine Corps so we could go to college on the GI Bill. And then I went to the University of Southern California to study business, to take over my dad's real estate development firm. He builds office buildings and hotels, and I hated it. I hated business administration. I would have rather taken a bullet in the head than to have sat behind a desk my whole life. And so I changed my major in college to creative writing and film and television production. And when I got out of USC, I had saved a bunch of money. I leased apartments in LA while I was in college. That's how I made money to help pay my way through, in addition to my old man helping me a little bit. But he was really serious about, we worked from a very young age in my family. I think my first job was like seventh or eighth grade. I started pumping gas up in Wisconsin in the summers. So anyway, I'd saved up all this money, and I thought, I'll do something no American has ever done. I'm going to go to Paris and write a novel. Of course, tons of Americans have done this. That was just my running joke at the time. But
starting with Hemingway, but yeah,
exactly, and Henry Miller, and on and on and on. F. Scott Fitzgerald. So I got over to Paris. A friend had a room in her apartment, let me have it, and I was very afraid of failure. And so I got a couple chapters into that novel, and I gave it up. I had that voice in the back of my head that said, why risk the embarrassment? Maybe the book's going to suck. Maybe nobody's going to like it. So better to not write it at all than to set yourself up for failure. And I gave into that voice. It was a mistake. But I traveled around Europe with the money I had saved, and I saw all of these young people with backpacks. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And seeing my country from abroad, I always felt made me a better American. And I said, I'm going to get back and pitch public television on a travel show for young people, 18 to 34-year-olds. I came back. It took a long time, but I pitched them. They loved the idea. I got a show on the air called Traveling Light. I was the producer, the writer, the host. I used to make up names for the credit crawl. I used to take friends from high school and throw them in there and stuff because I didn't want to seem like a small-time operator. And on my honeymoon, after my second season of shows, I met my wife, we got married, and we were on our honeymoon, and she said, what would you regret on your deathbed never having done? And I said, writing a book and getting it published. And she said, okay, when we get home, you need to start spending 2 hours a day, protected time, make that happen. And that's kind of the condensed 30,000-foot version of how it happened. And,
but there's a lot there, though, right? You have, my grandfather once said, if you pick the right spouse, focus on one, don't focus on many, they'll help you get to wherever you want to go. So your wife definitely helped you.
Amen.
The second thing there is you had something burning, and some of us snuff that out. We get fearful. We're worried about our paychecks day to day, and we don't want to take the leap. I always wanted to have my own business. So I was at Goldman making a lot of money, Brad, but I said, I got to go have my own business. I left. I took a 7-figure job to a no-figure job, and everyone thought I was crazy. But it was a better life for me because it fit my personality. It didn't hem me in. So has your writing fit your personality?
Well, I think so. First of all, that's that old poem that path diverged in the woods, and I took the path least traveled by, and it's made all the difference, right? You took your chance, I took my chance. Neither of us are going to wake up on our deathbed saying, "What if we'd only done this?" Years ago. So the writing, I will say this, Anthony, the character, my protagonist, Scott Harvath, and for those of your viewers and listeners who haven't read a Brad Thor book before, I tell people that my thrillers, because I've got the same guy in all the books, Scott Harvath. He's a former Navy SEAL that does very, very off the book stuff for the government. And I tell people that the books are like the James Bond movies. If the newest Bond movie is in your local multiplex down the street, you can go see it. Doesn't matter if you've never seen a Bond movie before. You're not going to miss out on anything. You'll get caught up real quick. Same thing with my books. So I tell people that Scott Harvath is kind of my alter ego, the same way I believe James Bond was for Ian Fleming and then Jack Ryan was for Tom Clancy. So I used to joke that he gets to do the things that my wife won't let me go and do. And if I say that in earshot of my wife, she said, "Well, I let you go to Afghanistan." And I said, "Yeah, we made sure all the insurance was paid up and all that kind of stuff." But my wife was pretty cool when I wanted to go over there and do some research. So yeah, he's my alter ego. So I get to have a lot of fun writing this character. So,
but you're talking to a lot of people. You're talking to intelligence sources. You're on the ground in places like Afghanistan. You're on the ground in other Middle Eastern countries, Asian countries. The stuff you write, and I've been to some of the places that you write about, including Afghanistan. I was a part of the business executives of national security for 5 years. So I traveled to Iraq, traveled to Afghanistan on troop support missions. The stuff you're writing about is real. And it's sort of like, I sort of feel like it's near nonfiction. Like some people are fiction writers, but you're near nonfiction, meaning it's coming up. Coming up is what Scott Harvath is doing in this summer's novel, except it'll be sometime in 2025. We'll have to deal with it. So let's set the scene without blowing up the book for people. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the plot and where Scott ends up.
So I call what I do faction, where you don't know where the facts end and the fiction begins.
Right, that's a beautiful word. I like that word.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons, and I will get to the book, but the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11 set up something called their Analytic Red Cell Unit, where they invited creative people into D.C. to help them war game. They realized like the day of 9/11 that we got hit and Al-Qaeda was successful because we weren't creative enough, and they were determined never to let that happen again. So they brought in all these creative thinkers from outside DC. I was one of them to help war game different scenarios. And I refer to that as the Las Vegas of government programs, because what happens in the red cell stays in the red cell. I can't use it for any of my books, but they wanted me there for the way I drew up these scenarios. So with this summer's thriller, with Shadow of Doubt, I have a high-level Russian defector that crosses the border into Norway with a ton of secrets that could shatter the West. And at the same time in Paris, a French intelligence officer has discovered a huge secret within the French government. Can't trust anybody in his own government. So he set up breakfast the next morning with the CIA station chief in Paris, but he dies. He's murdered that night before he can get to the breakfast. And then we've got my character, Scott Harvath. He's just come off an operation to rescue an American hostage in Ukraine. He's taken a week. He told his bosses, "Don't call me, don't email me, don't text me. I'm not going to answer. I'm going to go to Norway and I'm going to meet up with my fiance and I'm taking a week off." Well, when he lands in Oslo, there's a CIA station chief there as well. And she says, "We know your fiance is going to debrief this Russian. We need to know what she knows and we want you to spy on her." And he says, "Up yours, I'm not doing it. I've never said no to my country before, but I'm not going to spy on my soon-to-be wife." And the CIA blackmails him into service. He has never said no to an op. This one he's blackmailed into. But there's a twist. He figures out how to turn it around a little bit back on the CIA. So that's the jumping off point for Shadow of Doubt.
So, friend or foe? I'm going to ask you I'm going to say a couple of names. You tell me friend or foe. Ready?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Vladimir Putin, friend or foe?
Foe, 100%, no question.
Okay. So why are all these Republicans so sympathetic to him then?
Well, so here's what's going on, Anthony. If you read, particularly, I don't know if you read Anne Applebaum's book, Autocracy
On
Inc. is her
autocracy,
newest
yeah.
one.
I
Twilight
just
of
bought that book,
Democracy.
actually. I've invited her on, actually. I just bought that book. It's a small little book.
Yep.
I saw it in Barnes & Noble. I purchased it. I haven't read it, but go ahead.
So Anne Applebaum, her book from 2 summers ago is Twilight of Democracy. So when you look at the Balkans and other places that have slipped into ethnic strife and conflict, what you find is that the one group that had been dominant, that had been the all-powerful group, as they start to slide into minority, they fight back. And they fight back and lose respect for the rule of law and all this kind of thing. They want to preserve their way of life no matter what. In fact, one of the most interesting statistics or determinants I heard for whether or not your county had somebody at the January 6th insurrection was whether there was a dwindling white population in your county. So that was one of the greatest determinants as to whether or not somebody from your county was at the January 6th insurrection, which is very interesting. So if you look at the Balkans and other places that have slipped into ethnic strife and conflict, and the minority trying to shove the newly minted majority out, that's what you see. Not even out, but to prevent them from rightly taking power. And that's what we've got here. So now with these people who feel their life is in their way of life is in danger, that the country's slipping away, all of that kind of stuff, they are gravitating towards autocracy. They want a strong man. I alone can fix it sort of a person. And so they respect Putin. They like Putin. And let's face it, it is absolutely horrific that Trump holds up and slobbers all over Putin and Kim Jong-un and President Xi, all that kind of stuff. So that's where a lot of that nonsense is coming from.
Applebaum believes he does that because he wants to be them. Do you think that's the case?
Oh, I think if given the choice, yes. What kind of insane person says I want to be a dictator on day one? What kind of American citizen who appreciates the founding documents, the founding of this country, what America stands for? Right. Who would even can you imagine Reagan making a joke like that? I mean, that's insane.
No, I work for the man, and I saw how dangerous he was, and so they tried to discredit me the way they fired me, and then roughed me up on the way out. Because they were like, okay, this guy sees exactly what we're doing. He doesn't like what we're doing. And so they went to discredit me. So I know exactly what they're doing. I just wrote a piece on Project 2025. That is Trump's agenda. He put 85 of his acolytes in there. But, he's up against, she has some hard left policies. So there's a lot of people in the middle that don't see it as clearly as you and me. And they're like, okay, well, she's got hard left policies. He's not hard left, but he could be an alligator that eats you while you're crawling on his back. You see what I mean?
Yeah. And so for Trump, it's not necessarily the policies he likes. He likes that there's no guardrails, that these guys can do whatever they want and nobody stands in their way. Exactly. Everybody falls in behind them, never in front of them, and says, stop. That's what Trump likes about these guys.
So Putin is a foe, and I'm glad you said that, because I've seen the intelligence briefings. I know what a foe he is. I know what he's capable of. And I always tell people that Putin's People, which was written by Catherine Belton. She was the former Financial Times Moscow bureau chief. H.R. McMaster, who has a new book out, he sent me during COVID in 2020 a copy of her book. I read it from cover to cover. Putin is a foe. President Xi from China, foe?
Foe, absolutely, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, this is one of the things with the populist agenda and kind of the American First crowd is they don't want America to project power or be involved in other nations, but they still want America to be number one. Those two are mutually exclusive. You can't sit behind your oceans and be number one. If we step off the world stage, Xi and China are going to step into that power vacuum. They are already doing it with the Belt and Road Initiative and have been up to it for decades. I think it's over 20 years now. So this is. You can't have both. You can't be isolationist and number one. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay. Let's keep going. I'm with you, and you and I share the same philosophy, and it's evident from your books. And I'm an American first, and I'm a partisan last, actually. So I don't even recognize the party that I used to be a part of, which was Reagan and Abraham Lincoln's party. But
me neither.
Let's keep going, okay? So Scott has been through hell and back. He's a loner, but he's a friend. He knows how to bond with people. He is incredibly resourceful. Have you met people like this that work for the United States government? I know the answer to this, but tell us about them.
I have. So Scott Harvath, my main character, is basically an amalgam of people who I know that are out doing some of this nation's most dangerous business. You've got to be a self-starter. You've got to be charming when it's necessary to be charming. You've got to be able to work well on a team. But most importantly, they've got to be able to put you into some of the worst places in the world, and you've got to figure out how to adapt and overcome. And that's my protagonist, Scott Harvath.
Okay, and I agree with all that. Okay,
so far passing the test. Good.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing you've done well, and I want you to explain to people who are writers that listen, because this is an author's podcast. The title of the podcast is An Open Book, and it's really me interviewing best-selling authors. But you've done something really well here. I have read all of these books. So I feel like I know Scott Harvath, but then I try to step back and say, let's say I just read this book on its own. Let's say I read Shadow of Doubt on its own. I know the book. How do you do that? How do you write a series of books where I can pick up book 13 and I'm right in it, and I didn't have to have books 1 through 12, or I could pick book 24. Yeah. How do you do that?
So it's a high wire act, Anthony, because I've got people like you that have been with me since the very first book, and then I've always got new people coming on board. So how do I onboard those new people quickly without boring the old people that know the history of Scott Harvath? Elmore Leonard was famous for saying his advice to young writers: leave out the parts that people skip. So I've got to be careful not to put too much in there. So what I try to do is, when I'm explaining a little bit of Scott's background, is I find a new way to do it with each book. I tell maybe a little bit different thing from his past, which will be new to the existing readers, and of course brand new to new readers, but it serves two purposes. It gives the existing longtime readers a neat little piece of the puzzle of Scott's background, but it also serves to bring brand new readers up to speed, because my editor gave me a great piece of advice as I was going into book number 2. And she said, don't cannibalize your own sales. You never want somebody to walk into their local bookstore looking for that great beach read, and they say, oh, here's Brad Thor's book. Oh, this is book number 5. Oh, wait a second. If you haven't read the first 4 books, you can't buy this. And then they go buy a Patterson book or something like that. God help them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be critical of him, but
and I'm just teasing. Patterson's a great
writer,
guy, great writer, great guy.
He's a great guy, great writer, but it's very good. I can predict his books. There's a formula to his books. And if you read one of them, great. But if you read 10 of them, you're like, okay, I can see where this is going. I can see chapter 22 in chapter 4. Your book, I can't figure it out. So I have to actually read the damn thing. Good. I have to turn the page. And so that's my second question related to your writing style. You make it fresh and you make it relevant, and it doesn't matter which book I buy. I'm in the book. But then, because listen, I have read every spy novel that comes out. Okay, I mean, I am a spy novel reader. Charles Cummings from the UK. You mentioned some of the other competitors you have, which I won't mention on this podcast. But you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I can't predict what you're doing.
Good.
So what do? Do you say, okay, the reader thinks I'm going to go this way, let me go the other way, or what do you do?
So that's it. So first and foremost, my job is to entertain you. So I'm crafting short, crisp, cinematic chapters. In fact, one of the nicest accolades I get is, oh my God, I bought my son your book, or I gave your book to my mom who wasn't a reader, and now she is. She loves your book. She's gone back and read all of them. So what I try to do, there's 2 types of authors. You get somebody who's a plotter and they outline, or a pantser, somebody who flies by the seat of their pants and doesn't outline. And I'm a pantser. So now that can be tough. It can be really stressful, because I'll paint myself into a corner, and my wife jokes by the look on my face. She can tell if it's a red wine night or a bourbon night when I get home from the office. And she says, don't worry, you'll figure it out tomorrow. And then I'll come in and I'll work it out. But I like to say that I take the first of all, I want to have the same experience writing these books, Anthony, that you do reading them. Robert Frost said, no joy in the writer, no joy in the reader, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. So what I want to have the same heart pounding, palm sweating experience writing it that you do reading it. So my rule is, if it's time for something new to happen in the book, I take the first 4 ideas that come into my head and I throw them out. Because if they're that obvious to me, they're going to be that obvious to the reader. And then I start toying with 5, 6, and 7. And that's where it gets interesting. And that's, I think, what keeps it fresh, exciting, and you don't know what's coming around the next corner.
Well, terrific. let's talk about the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm new to the world. I've just landed. My Martian spacecraft has landed. I'm in your backyard. I come into the house. I'm in your beautiful study. And I say, okay, tell me about this world that you're living in. Tell me about the intrigue that you are so on the pulse of, this international intrigue. So go ahead, give me a briefing. Tell me what's going on.
So you're talking about the real world that we're
The
living
real
in right
world,
now.
the real world, not the world that we teach our kids, not eighth grade social studies about America, but really what's happened in America and really what's happened around the world. And because let me preface it by saying this to you. I think you and I are two of the luckiest people that have ever lived. And let me explain why. We've grown up in a post-World War II America where America has run the card table. Maybe it's becoming harder to run the card table, but for 80 years. And we're still the reserve currency for the world, a result of which there's a ceiling, there's an unlimited, as George Bush's dad, George Herbert Walker Bush said, CAVU, ceiling and visibility unlimited. That's been the case for America for a long time now. But tell us about the world that you were living in. Give me a briefing. Say, look, here's what America's dealing with now. Here's where the Russians are. Here's how India's coming into the situation. Here's the Chinese. Here's what's going on with the Iranians and the Israelis.
Yeah, let's preface this on the aliens at least know that we are what the Westphalian nation state is, and that we've got different tribes. Let's say on this planet, we might be all of the same species, but we're not all of the same tribe.
Right. And just for young people, what Brad is referring to as the Treaty of Westphalia, we've really aggregated of ourselves into sovereign nations. And we each have a sovereign nation that represents itself in the international community, and a result of which it's tied to certain respected international laws and norms, even norms in war. As an example, we have a Geneva Convention in terms of how we have to treat each other when we're in war. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I would tell the aliens that for the longest time on this planet, people thought that history repeated. And it's only of late that we're realizing that history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it does rhyme. And I would back us up to 2014, where Putin, via his little green men, basically men in green fatigues that didn't have any insignias that said they were Russian military, though they were, went into the Donbass, basically went into eastern Ukraine. 2014 took it over. Now, what's really interesting is when the Soviet Union broke up at the end of the 90s, a third of the Soviet Union's nuclear arsenal was in Ukraine. And we went to the Ukrainians and said, please don't keep these missiles. Let us help you get rid of them. We're going to help you deactivate them. You don't want these. You don't have the wherewithal to maintain them. And the Ukrainians were smart. They said, listen, we'll do it. We'll agree to this, but we need a promise from you, the United States, that if we give up our nukes, nobody's ever going to invade us. Nobody's ever going to take our territory, and you're going to see to it. And the U.S. said, fine, we'll sign that. It was called the Budapest Memorandum. And they said, great, the ink is now dry. Get the Russians to sign it. This is pre-Putin. And the Russians did. But then Putin came to power. And what Putin did by going into the eastern part of Ukraine, he said he was there to help Russian speakers that were in that area, which is the same excuse that Hitler used when he went into Czechoslovakia. So when you see pictures of Neville Chamberlain waving around the piece of paper saying peace in our time, that's when they decided to hand over the Sudetenland, this area that had a lot of ethnic Germans, German speakers, to Hitler, thinking it would slake his thirst. So what I would tell the aliens is we are living through both an exciting and very perilous time in our history, because a lot of things that have happened in the past are happening again, not exactly the same way, but similar. Again, history doesn't rhyme, or it doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. But we're also living through things in history that have never happened before. So you had LBJ that didn't go for a second term, but the Biden thing, Biden's not going for a second term, but there's a flip now. It's Kamala Harris who's now stepped in, and it's a really short race. And the Trump campaign, although they say they were prepared for it, they weren't prepared for it, and they don't know how to handle this. So I would say, if I had to the Chinese are on the rise. They are becoming a near peer power. They have a very impressive Navy. We need to invest a lot more in our Navy. We need to be putting a lot more into icebreakers in particular. I'm very concerned about that's Coast Guard, but it is Navy adjacent. So the Iranians, I think I'm on hold with the Iranians because I was really expecting a lot more with Hezbollah and the Israelis. I'm glad not to have seen stuff, but I would tell the aliens, grab a beer, sit down. Let's watch the next X amount of weeks between now and Election Day in November, because I think not only are we living through one of the most exciting points in history, we live in the best country in the history of the world at the absolute best moment. If you were a spirit up in heaven, a soul that was waiting to be born, and you could pick any time in any place to be born, you wouldn't know if you were black, Jewish, gay, if you were paraplegic, if you were going to grow up rich, grow up poor. If you didn't know any of that stuff, just you could pick the time and the place, you would pick America right now, today. It would give you more advantages, more opportunities, and it's exciting. So we have roles and responsibilities as citizens because we're stewards of this republic. But I got to tell you, Anthony, I'm not a baseball guy. Politics is my baseball, and this is so exciting. So that's why I would encourage I would hope my enthusiasm would be infectious for the aliens.
Okay, so one follow-up question from the aliens. Okay, when I watch the American electoral situation, both sides think it's perilous. The Democrats think democracy's ending with Donald Trump, and the Republicans, or the people supporting Donald Trump, if you can call them Republicans, they think that we're going to end up with communism and Marxism in the country. So, are either of them correct, or neither of them correct?
So I don't believe – so I left the Republican Party in 2018. I worked on 2 Republican presidential campaigns prior to that. I worked on Rick Santorum's and Rick Perry's, still friends with both of them. Listen, Trump sat on his big orange ass for 3 hours during the insurrection, didn't do anything, could have called the people back because he wanted them to be successful. He was hoping that they would succeed. If you didn't want that to go on, you wouldn't be sitting there watching it unfold on Fox News. So he wanted that to succeed. The idea that we are giving him another shot at office is reprehensible. It's reprehensible.
That's Kevin McCarthy's fault, by the way, because McCarthy had
right
him
down to Mar-a-Lago and kiss his ass.
He could have put him right through the ropes. Yep. And he would be running for president. He would be the most popular Republican since Reagan.
Trump could have been banned from office.
But think about this for 1 second. But hey, I'm the Speaker of the House. You're invading my house. Mm-hmm. Who would allow that? Only Kevin McCarthy would allow that. So anyway.
Only Kevin McCarthy. And then listen, there were 2 impeachments and nothing happened in the Senate. So there's a lot of Republican senators who have this on their hands too, including Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, but McCarthy could have broken. McCarthy could have gone to McConnell and Schumer and said, I'm done. You're not allowed to do that.
The dam broke, Anthony, when McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago and kissed the ring. I mean, McCarthy gives this big speech about how Trump is completely responsible for January 6th. And then a week, 5-7 days later, he's down in Mar-a-Lago. So McCarthy should not be remembered fondly listen, I love when he kicks Matt Gaetz in the pills. I love that. I think that's terrific, but I don't like McCarthy. That's about the only thing he does that I like. And I hope that history remembers him as poorly as he deserves to be remembered.
Well said. Okay. I mean, I'm loving this conversation, so I'm going to keep going. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about research. Okay. You're in Afghanistan. Something you learned in Afghanistan that you could not learn about reading about Afghanistan. Go. What is that?
Let's see. One of the things I learned about, and I had heard about it, but I saw it firsthand. There's this, the Pashto tribe have a code of honor called the Pashtunwali. And so with the team I was with, we didn't go into any village unless we had been invited by the elders, because they would fight to the last man in the village to keep you alive because you were their guest. And what was interesting is I was with this team and they were constantly introducing me as an author, as this American author. And I finally had to say, why do you guys keep telling them what I do for a living? Can't I just sit back here and let them think I'm one of you guys? And they're like, you don't understand. In Afghanistan, 2 of the most honorable and respected professions are doctor and author. So that was something that I'd never heard before that I learned in Afghanistan. Also, the best fried chicken I ever had was in Jalalabad, somebody's house.
Yeah. No, I love the food. I love the food. I definitely thought it was amazing. How about weaponry?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going with weaponry?
Well,
What's coming that the average citizen is not aware of or not ready for?
okay, so there's a lot of underwater stuff that we're working on now. There's a big drive in the United States for, in our military here, things that we could use against the Chinese in a confrontation with China, whether that's around the Philippines, which we are bound to help protect, or with Taiwan. So there's a lot of unmanned underwater stuff, which is very, very interesting. And also that's a big push with NATO. NATO is now standing up a new kind of security center or an operations center because they're very concerned about not so much non-state actors, because it's hard for them, but actual states that are enemies of the West, severing the undersea cables that we rely on for data transfer and all that kind of stuff. So the undersea warfare is amazing. And I think that would really shock people, the advancements and how much money's going in there and the kind of stuff they're coming up with. It's incredible. Very sexy.
Okay. It's not your last book, right, Brad?
No, in fact, I just signed a brand new contract with Simon & Schuster for a few more. So happy to keep them going.
When you get writer's block, what do you have to do?
So, you know what, Anthony, it's funny. Probably I had it several years ago when we decided to move our family back to Chicago from Park City, Utah. And I moved into a house that wasn't complete and it was just noisy and the kids and all this kind of stuff. And I had terrible writer's block. And I did some research. And the best piece of advice I've ever found, I've never found anything better than this. It's give yourself permission to write a crummy first draft. Okay. It's that desire to have everything be perfect that locks you up. And so if you have any talent at all, that crummy first draft's not going to be crummy. And there's a famous saying that you can't edit what hasn't been written. The tap needs to be open for the words to flow. So if you give yourself permission to write that crummy first draft, that is like a battering ram that goes through writer's block, which comes from perfectionism. That's where it stems from.
Okay. Amen. I've got 5 words for you. We're going to close it out with this. My producers and my team, after reading the book, I'm going to say 5 words. I'm going to say the word, you think of whatever comes to your head. Ready?
Yep.
I say the Pentagon, you say what?
Professional.
Okay. Conscience.
Courage.
I say the word service, you think of what?
Patriotism.
Okay. Okay. I say 2 words, Scott Harvath. Is that you, Brad Thor?
It is me to a large degree, but more than that, it's an homage to the men and women that go do some of this nation's most dangerous business away from their families. I tell people that there is no American dream without those willing to protect it. And then I go further and say, what does the American dream look like for those who do protect it? And that I wrestle with a lot in the books.
Right. Now, it's interesting because they do make incredible sacrifices. Mm-hmm. Okay. I say the 2 words, Brad Thor. You say what?
Junior. Because I think it makes me think of my dad, the Marine, and he's senior, and I'm Brad Thor Jr.
Okay, see, I see incredible life force. That's what I think. I see incredible life force, boundless energy.
Thank you.
Mr. Thor, thank you very much. The title of the book is Shadow of Doubt. It's another incredible thriller. Who is this good-looking guy on the back of this book, by the way? Is there any?
That's called digital Botox.
Is there any filtering going on there?
It's a 10-year-old. It's a 10-year-old photo. I need to get back in front of the camera.
God bless you. It's in bookstores now. The I don't know who the narrator is, but the audiobook version
Armin
is fantastic.
Schultz. Thank you. Yeah, he's great.
He's been with you for a while because I recognize his voice. And the book is phenomenal. I wish you great success. And thank you so much for coming on Open Book.
Thank you. Good to be here. And please give all my love to your wonderful mother-in-law, Anthony.
All right, there you go. See, you know what you're doing. Okay. Joining us now on Open Book is a blockbuster best-selling author, New York Times #1 best-selling author, award-winning journalist, Michael Wolff. He's written a couple of great books about Trump, but also books about television. Phenomenal journalist. The title of this book is All or Nothing: How Trump Recaptured America. And it really is all or nothing because he's either going to jail, Michael Wolff, or he's going to be the most powerful person in the world. It's a very binary outcome to him. So I think it's a great title. But I was telling my staff, because I've read all of your books, I think this is your best one. And And I think it's your best one because it's the best researched. I feel like these are first primary sources you've gone to that have given you great detail about how things have gone on. So I just want to start right there. Tell us as much as you can about what is going on and why are you surprised by the access that you had?
Well, I'm not. I mean, overall, over the many years now, I am surprised, but I guess I have grown quite used to it since my life is a kind of, and now for nearly 10 years has been a constant, certainly daily conversation with people around Donald Trump telling me the unbelievable stuff that happens. So it's frankly, I think that they talk to me independent of the fact that I'm writing a book, or actually in spite of the book. I think they forget that
I'm gonna push you back for a second, sir. I'm gonna get you to think about this. I think it's because of. I actually think it's because of. I think that they have decided that you're accurately depicting what is going on, and they almost want an accurate depiction, even if it's not.
I accept. Yes, and I accept that. And I mean, I've often wondered about what's going on here. Why me? And I do think that other books they've thought, well, this is accurate. This reflects their experience.
No, I listen.
But also at the same time, and it's a thing. As a journalist, this is a curious state of curious development that I actually like these people and they like me, and we've become friends over this period of time, talking about this phenomenon in their lives and in my life too. Donald Trump. What does this mean? How did this happen? Everybody is trying to figure this out.
Yeah. And I have a big question for you. After reading the book and your other books, there's a group of stalwarts that stay with Trump. There's the Jason Millers and so forth, right? And there's a group of people that are locked in with him. But the core group of people, the Bannons have circulated out. The Hope Hickses have circulated out, as you aptly describe in one of the chapters. She's engaged now to a Goldman Sachs partner. She's out of the picture. But there is a carousel of people. Trump manages to find Hope Hicks lookalikes. He manages to find replacements for Steve Bannon or replacements for Kellyanne Conway. Everybody gets into a little bit of a sticky situation with Trump. Everybody. Right? Even the ones that stay with him get
100%.
A little bit
sticky is a generous way to put it.
Generous.
Yes.
They get stung by him. They get beat up by him. They get bullied by him or tortured by him. Some ignore it and stay. Right? Those are like the Dan Scavinos of the world. Others they get exhausted from it. They leave. But he always manages to recruit a new group of people. The Elon Musks, the Howard Lutnicks, the Susie Wiles. What is that? What is that about Donald Trump based on your observation?
I think it's more about the presidency and the White House, or the possibility of the presidency. That's the intoxicant here, because otherwise it does strain logic. Everybody knows that 100% of the time you're going to end up fired, humiliated, indicted. It won't have a happy ending. So why do you do this? You do it because I think because of the potential of his success, and even that almost defies logic, because how if you think this through, there's no reason that he should be successful, except that there is this feeling, and people around him talk about this, that there is some kind of magic or luck or thing that they can't explain, but is nevertheless real enough for them to hook their.
And you write about this beautifully. So I'm going to explain it to our listeners. There's a cauldron. There's craziness. There's impetuosity. There's criminal indictments. There's disorganization. There's chaos. But then there's also some kind of genius going on as well. You've written about TV, you've written about Fox News. I've interviewed you related to Fox News and the concepts of imagery. Trump understands some of this stuff, right? He understands how to create an image of success, or how to gravitate and pull a certain group of people into his vision of things, anchor him.
Well, let's remember I mean, to me, the singularly the most important thing about Donald Trump is that he was the star of a top-rated reality television show for 14 years. 14 years. I mean, you learn the game. And, part of that game, the reality television show game, is conflict. You have to have conflict, a constant conflict. If you don't, you're going to lose your audience and lose ratings. And so you have to manufacture another conflict. And it's all about manufacturing conflict, which, of course, is partly what goes on a daily basis in the Trump circle.
But a little bit more organized this time, no? I mean, I feel like the 2016 campaign compared to the 2024 campaign is same lead singer, but it feels like the band and the guys that are organizing the AV and the people putting the drum in place, they may be a little more organized. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, absolutely. There was a core group of political professionals handling the campaign. They were not MAGA people. They were not ideological people. They weren't particularly Trump people. They were political professionals whose sole measure of success is winning. And they got to do their thing. So the interesting thing is, how come they got to do their thing?
That's the follow-up question.
Without him interfering. And
right.
I would say that the indictments and the trials and the whole legal morass and that legal threat kept him occupied enough for them to do their jobs.
Yeah. So basically, had he not been indicted, there would have been more chaos, right? He was almost scared shit into listening to them, to say it differently.
Yes, I think that is true. And had he not been indicted, there would have been less a story for him to exploit. I mean, ultimately, yes, if you looked at this scheme or strategy or tactic of indicting him on the part of the establishment or the Justice Department, yes, I think profoundly backfired.
Boris Epstein is a pretty high-profile figure in the Trump orbit. He's been in and out of the orbit. I know Boris pretty well. I campaigned with him in 2016. You write that he has reasonably, if not reasonably, very significant sway over a lot of Trump's legal and political strategies. And so why is that, you think? And what is Donald Trump's real opinion of Boris Epstein?
Well, I think that's I mean, the reason Boris has sway is that he says exactly what Trump wants to hear, and is a virtuoso at that. The curious thing is that Trump acknowledges that. There are instances in the book where I have him, Boris calling, and Boris calls constantly, 10, 20 times a day, of Trump holding up the phone with Boris's name on the phone, and holds it out to the people that he's having lunch with, and said, here's my Boris on the phone, is going to tell me why it's so great that I've been indicted another time. So there is that kind of acknowledgement on Trump that he likes a yes man around him, but will also kick the guy for being the yes man.
Yeah.
And Boris's strength in this is that doesn't matter to him. He can accept any humiliation, and has weathered many humiliations at Trump's hand.
They accuse him of taking money, all the different types of things. He just hangs in there.
Yes, and he was thrown out. He was in the first White House for a couple of weeks, and then they threw him out.
Right. Yeah, I've had that experience, Michael. I know the experience. Susie Wiles She's good. That's the toughest job in Washington, probably. Right? I think one of the toughest. She makes it.
You mean the chief of staff? Yeah. No. I mean, it's an interesting development. All his other chiefs of staff, he really didn't know. He had no real relationship with them. And in that Trump way, it was really Jared who was at least the shadow chief of staff.
Right.
But he now has, in Susie Wiles, he has a chief of staff who he's had now effectively a very long relationship with. Although when he first met Susie Wiles in 2016, she had been hired as the Florida to run Florida for him, and he first met her. He went back to his staff, in this case, Bannon, and said, "She looks like a refrigerator. Fire her." She was not fired. They went on to win Florida once, twice, and then she became in exile in Mar-a-Lago. She became kind of the keeper of the office, and is now the keeper of the Oval Office.
But Trump looks like a refrigerator. So what I love about Trump is that literally he's calling other people a refrigerator. It's like the kettle calling the pot black. It's unbelievable, his self-image versus the reality of him.
No, he clearly has no idea about the way he looks. He's one of the most extraordinary and you might say horrifying looking people in the history of modern politics.
Yeah. But there's an image there, though. There's something about the image. He's got the blue suit, the red tie, the orange
loves
war paint.
It. Remember, he lives in his own reality, and
right.
in that reality, he is. He's a super handsome guy.
Let's go to La Civita for a second. Chris, I've known him forever. He's a great political operator. He didn't take a job in the administration.
Well, I would read that as he didn't get a job in the administration.
Okay.
I think he's saying, yes, he decided to stay out. But I don't think you win a presidential campaign and at the very top of the campaign organization and then willingly on your own volition walk away.
Okay, so you think that he wanted a job, didn't get one. And what about Jason Miller, career operative?
Yeah, and I guess I would have to say the same thing. You just don't walk away from the White House. Now, of course, you might say, and I suppose with a certain amount of experience and maturity, you should say, why should I go into this, and risk humiliation, being fired, indictments, when I can stay outside of the White House and potentially make a lot of money? It's just not how political people usually respond.
One of my laugh lines when I'm out publicly speaking, because it's true, one thing about laughter is that when you say something true, people laugh. I always say that my wife hates Donald Trump almost as much as Melania hates him, almost as much. And I get a good laugh out of that. But you write in the book, literally, and I'm using your words, not mine, Melania blank hates her husband. So tell us about that.
Well, I was fishing around. I was, that's a quote from one of the people in the close Trump circle. And I was saying to this person, she hasn't made one campaign appearance, and did not until the last week of the campaign, and she hasn't shown up for the in any instances in any of his court appearances. And I had somebody told me the story of Jason Miller approaching her and saying, "Hey, it would be great in terms of the first indictment of you coming there and stand by your man." And then she said, then she laughed, said, "Nice try." Anyway, I was talking this through with one of the people and asking, so what's going on here? Really, what is this about? And I remember this person looked at me with incredulity, as though it should be obvious to anyone. And this person said she hates his fucking guts. And
Yeah.
then at that moment you go, oh my God, but could this be anything else other than that?
Well, no, I didn't think it in the beginning. I mean, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, in 2005 when The Apprentice started, I was at CNBC. I used to go to the parties, and it looked like they did have a relationship. But I think something did happen in the ensuing years. What do you think?
No, well, I think and you can imagine what happened. In addition to Stormy Daniels, there was, I don't think the presidency. I mean, as I talk about in my first book, he really did not expect to win, and she was resistant, and he assured her, no chance we're going to win this. And then I think this has all been Washington, him in the further exaggeration of his Trump persona has been difficult to handle.
I'm blown away by the reporting, and I'm blown away by the detail that you've gotten. And I've theorized something I want to test on you. No, nobody likes him. Nobody likes him. The kids don't like him. The wife doesn't like him. The staff doesn't like him.
I think only you and I get this.
Am I wrong in saying that, sir? I mean,
I mean, other than the people who don't know him out in the great land who vote for him, to know him is to really, really not like him, to dislike him actually intensely, to become for him to inhabit you in a way that is really, really toxic, which is one of the reasons, by the way, all of these people talk to me and continue to talk to me. You need an outlet when you feel that.
Right.
Now, and it's this thing, politics, and these are people, the bulk of them who have made political, or many of them who have made political careers. And in a way, they're used to people who are working for people who are extremely difficult. But I think Trump surpasses that.
Yeah. So I've never met anybody that likes him, and I talk to everybody as like you do, and they put up with him, and they tolerate him, and they work around him, and they go into spiritual healing, try to heal themselves, and all this sort of nonsense. But there's a high level of toxicity in his midst, and yet he still attracts these people. You explain that, but why? What is the ingredient? What am I searching for, sir? You have it a little bit in your book, but I'm going to try to explain it this way. He's disliked by the people that are closest to him, yet there's some type of a magical ingredient that he has where he's a prodigious political figure. I mean, we have to accept he's one of the more significant political figures of our life, because he's been with us now for 12 years. It's almost like an FDR shadow.
Totally. And that is part of the thing. It is politics. What is the thing you value most in politics? It is winning. And right now we have a pretty extraordinary record of him winning. But there's another thing, and it's a personal thing, and I've seen him in the room do this. There's this constant pairing of punishment and reward, which makes people crazy, and they don't know what to do. And it's his one of his forms, and almost everything he does is about dominance and submission. And it's a way that he achieves this. So people come to hate him for this, but it also is very, very effective of bringing people to heel, bringing people into your corner, getting them to do things that they would not otherwise do. The Michael Cohen example and all of that testimony was I can't think of anything that could be more vivid to that point and experience.
Elon Musk makes it, Michael?
Nobody makes it. Nobody.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, the Elon thing. Remember, so Steve Bannon made it for 6 months,
Right.
and Steve Bannon was in a way in the Elon position. The cover of Time magazine, all of that kind of thing, and then he went 6 months, and then he was out. Um, Now the question is, what does Elon want out of this? What does he hope he can achieve? I mean, he must have some idea that this is going to come to tears at some point. I don't know. Maybe he's hoping that Trump will die before it comes to that, and that will. I don't know.
No, guys like Trump don't die, though, Michael. I think you know that, and I know that.
Well,
He knows. The good die young, Michael. I want to tie it to one of your last books, one that we talked about, and that's Murdoch. Tell us the relationship that you feel that Donald. I saw Rupert in the Oval Office with Larry Ellison a few weeks back. What's the relationship with Trump, Fox News, and the Murdochs?
Okay, well, it's very complicated. Rupert hates Donald Trump. I mean, I've spoken, long before, long before the presidency was even on the horizon for Trump. Rupert used to talk about him and ridicule him. Um, and Rupert lived in a Trump building for a period when his big apartment on Fifth Avenue was being renovated, and Jared and Ivanka lived in that building, and he became friends with Jared and Ivanka, or his then wife Wendy really befriended them. But he got to know, Trump was around, and here I'll give you a story that once. I was interviewing Rupert. We were having coffee at his apartment in this building, spoke for whatever, an hour, and then we left together, and came down, got on the elevator, came down, midway it stops, doors open, and Donald Trump gets on. And Rupert, who is an incredible mumbler and talks into his arm, said some pleasantry, I suppose. And Trump turned to me and says, "Do you ever understand what he's saying?" But clearly, over the past, since January 6th, Murdoch set out to use Fox as the means with which to deprive Trump of any possibility of a further political career, really being one of the key people in the invention of the Ron DeSantis bubble. And obviously all of that failed. It turns out that one would have thought that Trump needed Fox. It turns out Trump is bigger than Fox, that Fox needs Trump. And Rupert, who is always Mr. Ultimately Realpolitik, came to Jesus, really.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody described the moment that Trump was in his office behind the desk, the phone rings, and he takes a call, and then he comes outside and says to everybody, "Well, you'll never believe that was Rupert." And somebody in the outer office says involuntarily, "Murdoch?" They couldn't believe that this finally, the thaw had finally happened.
Capitulation.
Yeah.
All right, I got you for 5 more minutes, so we'll talk quickly. Give me 30 seconds on Putin. What's the deal there?
What is the deal? It's some deal. It's either he does have something on Donald Trump, or whoever Putin is, whatever he has succeeded at, stealing billions of dollars and being the autocrat of our time, is directly appealing to Donald Trump.
Right. But prima facie, it feels like it's more than any of us can figure out. None of us.
Steve Bannon always used to say, that there must be something there.
Right. We couldn't figure it out. I talked to Steve about it. I talked to McMaster about it. We couldn't figure it out. All right, I've got 5 words. I'm going to read you these 5 words. I do this with every one of my authors. I'm going to say the word. You're going to say one or two sentences about the word. If I say the word or the concept MAGA, what does this mean to you? What's your reaction to that?
No, it's the Trump world and the Trump reality.
Yeah, and it's basically a hijacking of the former Republican Party, right? It's a decapitation.
Yeah, I mean,
that party. It's really that party now, right?
Exactly.
Okay. I say Trump world. What do you say?
That closed circle that he's in the middle of. Somebody once said to me that there's no reality for Trump outside of the sound of his own voice, and that is that world that he inhabits. In my book, I write about these two particular yes people, Boris Epstein and this woman Natalie Hart. Mm-hmm. So he reinforces this world. So it's a very, very, very circumscribed world. Nothing much gets in.
Right.
Which was
true in reality television, was true in real estate,
yes,
and is actually also true in politics. Okay, 3 more words. J.D. Vance. I say J.D. Vance. You think what?
Another, his lackey, just another person who has, drunk the Kool-Aid, and that will poison him.
So I think J.D. Vance ends up in the wood chipper, never makes it to the presidency.
Oh,
he's
absolutely.
the Mike Pence of this situation.
Yes. Anyone in the vice president, I mean, he doesn't want a vice president.
Right.
I mean, in the book, I quote him as saying somebody, why do I need a vice president?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. 2 more. Elon Musk.
Steve Bannon.
Okay. Last word. I'm going to give you the last word. Donald Trump.
The most extraordinary figure of our time, for better or worse.
He tries to stay. It's January 2029. He tries to stay.
He'll try to stay, but only on a performative basis. He will milk every headline he can milk, because that's what he does. That's what he thrives on. That's how he survives.
But he's gone on the 20th of January.
He's gone. Yes.
On the 29th.
Oh, yes.
All right, so
and probably grateful to be gone, by the way.
Tell me why.
I don't really think he likes being president. I think actually that his life in Mar-a-Lago these last number of years was much, much more pleasant to him, much more satisfying. To go through the campaign, a presidential campaign, an activity that requires superhuman attention, and to begin every day by playing 18 holes of golf, that's unique.
Yeah. I agree with you, by the way. He likes the attention, and if he can make some money off of it, money and attention are the two things in the reptilian brain. It's really nothing else. So I know he doesn't like the pomp and circumstance of the presidency in terms of things that he has to do as president. He likes the attention. Maybe he likes the band playing.
And he doesn't, when they make him focus on something that's really annoying to him, and he doesn't do it.
Right. Well, amen. All right. Well, the title of the book is All or Nothing. What a great title, because it's very descriptive. I think this is Michael's best book yet. It's incredibly well sourced, and there's some brilliant observations in the book. And if you want to get a sense for the road ahead in the Trump presidency, I'd really recommend to see it's out now. Thank you, Michael, so much for joining us on Open Book.